this computer. Awesome. Right. So essentially, hey, who joined during the time? Julian, Matthew, Marek, DW King at Gmail, Scott Moore. Okay, everyone's flooding in.
Hey.
DW King.
That's me. This is Doug King. I just joined.
Okay, Doug, what's up? 1 sec.
What Peter was saying is basically the point here is to organize everybody, figure out where everybody is, where everybody wants to go, and figure out how we can work together to kind of standardize and kind of run each other's meta transactions, right?
Yep. We're 1 minute into our waiting period. Kyle, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Jesus Christ, it's a lot of people.
Yeah, this is a really awesome group.
Oliver, what's up? Richard just joined in. Mark, T. Mark just woke up. It's 1 a.m. in Sydney. So I told him you have to come.
Okay, so we should probably start this by having everyone introducing themselves very quickly. Otherwise, we will spend like 1 hour introducing.
No. I want to get that. But before that, basically, I just want to give some context of the call, if that's cool. So essentially, different people have been working on Meta TXs, and we've come to the realization that there could be a potential project where we essentially have a service node network that executes these transactions, these meta transactions in a decentralized way, right? And I think that's a very interesting project to think about and also work on, but it will also be a very beneficial project for other projects who are working on meta transactions independently, because we'll essentially be facing the same problems and solving the same issues as we would if we were working alone. And yeah, hey Mitch.
I agree with Alex. We're gonna have to be very brief with these introductions.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, the agenda is online. You can find it if you want to. And essentially, let's just kick off with introductions. I'm Peter. I'm working the product at Tensor. We're building our Meta TX protocol. On to Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex van de Sande. I've been with Ethereum since 2014, and I'm working with Marek on the universal logins.
Sina?
Hey everyone, I'm Sina, and I'm working on a relay network that's peer-to-peer, and that can work with various protocols.
MP?
Hey, I'm MP, and I'm not a developer, but I'm taking notes for a column because we're interested on this. So we started the group.
Tobias?
Hey, I'm Tobias. I work at Gnosis on the Gnosis Safe. I do product, actually together with Richard, who knows way more about the tech stuff than I do. And yeah, we do meta transactions.
Austin?
Yeah, so I just did a couple demos for meta transactions, just trying to learn more about it and help out wherever I can.
James?
I'm the VP of engineering at SpankChain. I'm looking to understand how to use subscriptions, meta transactions.
Marek? You're muted, Marek.
Yeah. So Marek and Justina here. We're working on universal logins and related topics with Alex.
Doug?
Doug King, CTO of Verity. I'm working on universal logins, onboarding on lots of users for very cheap, and microtransactions.
Scott?
Hey, leading dev relations at Gitcoin, and we're really interested in subscriptions and meta transactions, along with the work that Kevin's doing on that front.
Kyle?
Yep, I'm the architect at Boomerang Project, and I'm working on universal logins. Actually, working off of Marek's project. So,
Richard.
So as said by Tobias, I'm also working on the Gnosis Safe. I wrote most of the smart contracts and part of the Android app. So,
George.
Hey, I'm also working on the same sphere here, meta transactions, universal IDs, mostly working on the relay network and counterfactual instantiation.
Julian.
Hey, I'm Julian, one of the co-founder at Argent. Yeah, we're building a smart contract-based mobile wallet, and we leverage meta transactions. So happy to be on the call.
Awesome, Beltran.
Hi, I'm Beltran. I'm the UX designer at ENS, and I'm interested in all things onboarding. And we work with Kyle on something interesting, and Austin also at ETH Berlin. Done.
Oliver, would you like to?
Hi, I'm Oliver at Argent, and as Julian said, we are using for smart wallets meta transaction a lot.
Mark?
I'm working with Tenzorum for universal logins and more approachable UX layer for users and developers.
Matthew? Okay, Akil?
Hey, just working on looking at universal logins and more of the onboarding side from UX.
Peter, yes, last one.
Hi, so I'm Piotr from Chronologic. We push the Ethereum alarm clock and now working on version 2 based on signed messages, essentially.
Yeah, cool. So essentially, more or less, we have a mix of people who are using meta transactions, if not are building a protocol for it. And I guess from the previous discussion we've had since last week is that we actually want to actually look to see how we can build a decentralized network where different people can participate in executing these meta transactions. And there are lots of, I mean, we haven't put together, I guess, documentation of why we want to do that, but mainly because it's to actually, I guess, the main reason is to de-risk, I guess, the centralized server that would otherwise be relaying transactions. And if you think about it, like this essentially I guess, relaying transactions, it actually means the power. I mean, if you take it out, it means taking out the power of actually executing it. I mean, it's what relays, I mean, what meta transactions allow you to do is execute on-chain transactions without any gas. So it's quite a important thing actually, right? And I think how we want to actually move towards this is actually to design an MVP, which we've been talking about with Austin. Would you like to give more light on that, Austin?
Yeah, so we were just kind of basically coming up with this idea that we could all take our same networks and apply the same standard to them, where each side basically has the same kind of thing. Where is there a way that basically, if you could share with us how we get your transactions, how we check to see if your transactions are ready to go and maybe even economically viable, and then how we execute your transactions. And if we could get like a Docker container going or some kind of code that's shared by everyone where we kind of fill in that information, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm just sharing my screen here, right? So essentially, one proposed, I kind of just threw this together, but like the first proposed MVP for this, right, is essentially just design a network that takes meta transactions and execute them. And we just take the assumption that these the nodes are trusted parties, and we just keep it super simple in the sense that you have a meta TX format that we agree on, and then they're executed by different nodes.
That's a really important assumption that we're going to make at first, is just that everybody is a good actor. Let's start by thinking everyone's a good actor, and let's just get this to work with everybody's stuff. And then let's start putting in the game theory and the attacks later.
And the economics later, essentially, right? I mean, I threw this together. It's called the Harbour-MVP because it's called it's for trusted parties, it's safe. So essentially what it will potentially consist of is that we'll have meta TX sent to a server, which will then distribute the meta transactions to different service nodes. So we previously talked about the algorithm, or like how we actually propagate meta transactions throughout service nodes network, right? And we've been talking about it, whether it happens in a network layer or whatever, but the logic we're just, at least for the MVP, we might be able to just abstract the logic into just like an access endpoint server. And we can just play around with that. And then this server essentially receives meta transactions, then distributes them just randomly to different nodes. And at these nodes, they basically check if the TX's meta transaction is executable, conditions, are met and if the meta transactions are economically viable.
I think that Alex is probably the farthest out of ahead on this stuff. I'd love to hear his opinion on how we could go forward as a group. Are you out there, Alex? There he is. Oh, you're muted.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm very happy to see so many people like working together on this, and I'm very happy to see that people are working on different stuff, right? I think my work with Marek and FWorks has mostly been with trying to solve the user interface, the front end problem, and we are always assuming that there will be a single server, right? And I love that everyone is sort of focusing on different parts, and I agree that I like the approach of let's start with the assumption that all the parties are trusted and they're acting correctly. And the first thing we really need to have is a standard on executable functions themselves. I was just talking with Marek about it, and Status was using one and Nozis is using another. We are just starting to implement that in our side. We are starting to implement the Nozis safe. We are using the Nozis safe as a basis, but there are small things here and there that do not really work. And I think we only get there by implementing and seeing. Look, we implemented Nozis safe, and it doesn't we want to change a few parameters here and there, and that's how we give a feedback, right?
So what all do we actually need to standardize? Like, can our code and our execution actually be a little bit different? What does the smart contract execution arguments need to be the piece that's the most standardized, or how do we?
The pieces that we need to standardize is how do we assign message? That's super important, and what are the smart contract interfaces that we need in the other side, which will probably something like execute transaction, right? An execute transaction interface that everyone accepts the same parameters or very similar parameters, and that's going to be the first one. The second step on checking if it's executable, if it's profitable, if it's economically feasible, that probably each one of those will require a different different one. And one of the first things we need to start is that if you're executing a transaction and that contract is paying you back in tokens somehow, you are sort of trusting that contract is gonna be, even if that contract has a standard, you're trusting that their implementation will work. And my proposal in the beginning would that every server has their trusted contract, right? Where they only trust contracts that have been deployed by these parties or that have these bytecodes. And probably we'll have to go into that and how do we get people to trust bytecodes and things like that, so that you can trust that particular contract will be implemented the right way, that they are going to pay you back for the work you're doing.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, essentially we already have kind of got GitHub issues and threads detailing the problem of how do you actually trust the fact that these nodes will execute them. And there've been different solutions such as staking and several other ideas floating around. But yeah, like the idea is I guess today is to figure out what we need to standardize, right? And also split them off into different threads separately.
I think in the beginning, just a simple, you trust this bytecode, or you trust bytecode contracts that were generated from the following contracts is going to be enough. Because if you don't pay someone like once, then you're not going to get service from anyone again, right? So I don't think we need to have a very complicated staking thing. I think one of the things that that I don't have a solution for is how do we solve in the multiple server stories the I don't know how to I don't know how to name the problem, but the problem on how do you prevent that multiple servers are trying out to deploy the same transaction?
The collision
the
problem.
collision
Problem.
The meta TX propagation, right? Like throughout the different.
Yeah, I think that's a hard one.
We
Otherwise, everyone will be paying like the high gases to be the first in line, and everyone else will not be paying, and then it becomes an avalanche because everyone else needs to pay higher and higher gases, and most people are not getting paid, right?
Sina, would you like to jump in there? I know you're on top of that problem.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, there are a few approaches like that are being considered at the moment for this. Like basically what we need is consensus on who is going to publish this transaction to the network. Like, I mean, it depends on the architecture of the actual system. So whether you choose one relayer to deploy your transaction to the network, or like you publish a transaction to a bunch of relayers, and then like all of them try to publish the transaction to the network. Like in each of these cases, it's somewhat different. So whether you have a specific relayer in mind or not. And like a simple one that I thought it's not economically viable, but like just a simple proof of work maybe could work. So all relayers, when they receive a transaction, they all start solving this proof of work puzzle. And when they get it, then they submit the transaction. The safe wallet checks that the proof of work is valid. And this kind of puts a delay between when the transaction is sent to the relayers and when it's submitted to the network. And it decreases the probability that multiple relayers submit it at the same time. But yeah, of course. Sorry.
Doesn't that just create another problem in which now the relayers are not only spending, trying to spend, instead of spending more gas to be the first to publish, they're just spending more energy to be the first to publish.
Yeah, so it's not an ideal solution, of course. Like this is just, I thought for an MVP might be suitable, but in future, like, so one other approach is to have it as a stake, like kind of as like a simple model of proof of stake, so that you can, for each block, you choose one relayer randomly to submit a batch of meta transactions.
Yeah, and what's the negative side of just having the DApp choose relayers, or just the client side choose relayers, because you basically skip all these problems if you just go with the first approach that you outlined?
So yeah, so I don't know, like it could work, but I see at the moment, I see that it's somewhat fragile. Like there are some problems. So the user chooses a relayer, sends a transaction to the relayer. What happens if the relayer doesn't submit it? So here we needed like a timeout and a stake for the relayer. And then
And then, yeah, sure, Simon, sorry.
And then the user could send a meta transaction to multiple relayers. What happens in this case? So does the user also need to put a stake? And then how can we prevent, like there are a lot of edge cases around this, but if we can manage to find a solution that solves all of them, yeah, of course this could work.
Also, another complicated factor, and why the user can't simply use one, is the vision that I really would love to see for this is that like your relationship is not with a single, the relationship you have with your identity is not controlled by a single guy, right? So I created my identity in status, but that doesn't mean that status is the only one that controls my identity. Gnosis also has an identity, and the idea is that each of them has a key. And what happens is that in order to execute a transaction, I might need to have a signed message both from Gnosis and from Status and from the other app. And I need to take those three apps, those three signed messages, put them together, and then publish it to the node. So what that requires is that not only I need to be communicating with multiple servers, that probably we want to create an ecosystem in which those servers are incentivized to talk to each other and ask for signed messages. Where I want to execute something, I want to send a message to status and say, look, when status receives a message, Nazis wants to send a message, status wants to send a message to Nazis saying, look, I have this signed message, I need other signed one. Can you go and ask your user to sign this for you? So what happens is that I sign a message in status, then like my Nazis app in my computer pops up and asks me to confirm that. I confirm that, and maybe my ledger will also ask me. And that means that all those three companies, they need to be sharing those information, right? So that's why I think an approach where there is some sort of round robin, where you have like one relayer for like everyone knows their place, would probably work better. But then if you are going to do that, we need to change the standard of the interface, because what we are doing right now supposes that that anyone can publish, and the first person to publish gets the reward. If there are going to be some rules of that, and even if those rules are open, right? If there's, we probably need to have some field on the on the transaction that says, look, what are the rules behind this transaction? Are you okay with first person to publish publishes it, or do you want them to follow the rules that are in a given contract or things like that?
But where do you think that we should put the rules? Directly in the smart contract, on the nodes, on a kind of second layer protocol between the nodes to share the information? How we should to put these rules, basically? Because if we put too much rules on the smart contracts to relay with the transactions, the gas cost will be too much. It will be really high in computation if we have too much rules, basically. So how we can handle that, in your opinion?
Oh, you're correct. I'm not saying that the relayer should be part of smart contract. What I'm saying is that when you're signing a message saying, you probably need also to sign somehow you need to sign an intent on who exactly you want to be the relayer, or at least which sort of rules those relayers will follow, right? I don't know how exactly that would work, if that's going to be enforced by a smart contract or not.
If I may say something, I think this is like not a good approach, essentially, because you're creating another UX barrier, and we essentially want to solve the UX problems by having the signed messages. So I think we're kind of mixing two concepts here. So from the like a signer perspective, so whoever is going to sign message and want this transaction to be executed, it doesn't really care. It don't cares. You know, in like a perfect situation is that I'm using Web3 stack. I'm sending my signed message to whatever Whisper or any other like peer-to-peer protocol, and it just automatically appeared because I signed a reward or whatever reimbursement for this transaction. So I here actually disagree on kind of complicating this stuff unnecessarily.
I definitely agree with what Piotr said, and I couldn't get the use case where you would require like 3 different signed messages to execute a single action.
Multisig. So suppose that you have a multisig, and what you're saying is that you want that like your phone, your computer, and a third device, all of them need to sign a message, and those 3 devices those 3 signed messages then need to be put together by the relayer, and then that's how it's executable.
Yeah, but is this a job of the relayer, or is this job of the DApp that is provided of the multisig?
Well, if we have multiple relayers, and if you want a safe multisig, ideally what you want is that each of those signed messages might be made by a different app, right? I might having one signed message, like status is signing one, Infuta is signing other, my ledger is signing a third one, and each of them have their own way. And we don't want a situation, and here's the thing, suppose that suppose that everyone signs a message, but only the person who deploys it gets paid. So that means that if I sign a message and I give it to Ledger, Ledger has an incentive not to share it with Status. Otherwise, Ledger sort of wants Status to give them the message, but they want to be the last one to sign and publish, right? It becomes a problem in which the last person to sign it, it's the one who gets paid, and nobody wants to share it with each other. So that's why I think we need to solve, like, when we solve the game theoretical problem, we need to understand that we need to create something that everyone has an incentive to share messages between each other. That's what I'm saying.
Can I add only one thing, one rethought? Sorry, Sina, just wanted to put it in there. What if we imagine that the most eager participant or actor in the game to receive that transaction is the DApp? So the DApp is the one that transaction gets actually executed. Secondly, probably the user. So probably it makes sense that if this system, if this standard allows to choose who are the relayers, that there is a list of relayers, and maybe each DApp has their own relayer, and so each DApp sends or constructs a transaction that goes through their relayer, so that they can also waive the extra fee if they want. And so in this setup, we are directing to a specific relayer that is me, the DApp holder, if you want. I don't know if this helps. I agree on simplifying the UX, but I understand also the other implications. What do you think?
Well, here's something important. I think we are just talking about challenges that we have. We don't need to solve them right now, and the goal is not to solve them right now. And that's why I think that it's probably going to be complicated to find a good way to do that. And that's why I think it's good that we start with the assumption that everyone is playing nice and everyone is just happy and kumbaya, and then we try to add into those more complicated game.
So essentially, we ideally want to define the different problems, and we already have a GitHub issue, like I said, around this. Man, it's good that we've identified that this is a big mountain to actually climb. So our purpose, at least for this, right, is to actually develop an MVP for trusted parties, right? And then have research be a couple steps ahead, 2 or 3 steps ahead. And then when we get to actually developing the next stage, right, we will have at least the best alternative answer at that moment.
So to talk on top of that a little bit, the MVP where we trust everybody still needs to have collision detection, because even a centralized server will detect that it's time to put something on chain, and then it will detect again that it needs to put something on chain, even during the time where it's waiting for the block to. So what I ended up, even with my centralized service, I basically have the node push back to the database when it's going to execute a transaction. And then that even puts that transaction all the way back to the DApp. So the DApp can see that there's a transaction, a meta transaction that's executing on behalf of them, and they know the transaction ID and everything. So not only does the meta transaction feed out to the network, but then the network feeds back in the transaction hash. So I've just used that to basically keep collisions from happening. And obviously there's a ton of game theory that would fall apart there. But if we just make the assumption that everybody's a good actor, I think that's a really good model to work on. Is basically you push your transaction out, someone else pushes it back to the centralized database saying, I'm going to work on this transaction. And we kind of trust that they're going to do that.
I just have a word of caution here.
Yeah.
Like, I feel, I don't know about you guys, that the use case where we assume everyone is honest is something that we can solve, and I believe that we can solve it very well. And I also believe, from the little investigation that I have done, that once you start assuming things that are for dishonest people, basically whatever we have done is going to be totally obsolete. So I'm wondering whether we should not assume just at least a couple of things there for participants that are not honest.
Yeah, that's definitely something.
So to build on that idea of a central database, right? I think if you were assuming that all participants were honest, that probably the best way to do it would be that everyone would have a period of time, let's say 10 minutes interval, where during those 10 minutes, only Beltran is gonna publish transactions. After and then after there's the other 10 minutes where only person X will be publishing transactions and things like that, right? And then that guarantees that everyone has a very short time where they have a sort of monopoly on all transactions during those 5 minutes. And then if you want to do like not assuming everyone is paying, then what you can do is we can have a smart contract where everyone puts a stake down to own like those 5 minute slots. And if someone finds out that someone did not respect that 5 minute slot, or that someone did not publish any transactions during those 5 minute slots, then they will be punished by losing their stake. Yeah. So that's an approach that we can try to do, where people simply pay to own a 5 minute slot.
Yeah. Well, you simplify it with block numbers instead of time slots.
Sure.
And if we don't think that we can do it on the smart contract level, so we don't need staking, we could just verify the condition, right?
Yeah,
but if they don't show up.
Yeah.
But it should not be a single block. It should be a series of blocks so that there's
exactly. That's what I meant, exactly.
Yes, I work on. I'm working also on this design pattern of a gas provider. Gas provider relayer staking a token on a relay on a contract, and I think maybe we could apply a kind of TCR, and the TCR will be managed by the DApp to saying that these gas providers we can trust them, and so every month. For example, we can say, or on a maybe 10,000 block windows, we could say that this gas provider will get all these transactions, something like that via TCR. I don't know, what do you think about that? To manage basically the gas provider via TCR, and if some gas provider have a bad behavior, we can open a conflict through the TCR. What do you think about something like that? Because in a certain way, what we want to do is a curation of the good gas provider and the one who doesn't behave in a bad way, basically, right?
I'm not sure, but like I think TCRs are fairly complex beasts. So, but maybe we can consider them for later stages. But now to build on Alex's idea. So here, like we have three entities. We have dApps that users interact with to sign transactions. We have relayers, and we have online wallets or like smart contract wallets. Maybe we could have something like this, that relayers are listening on a PubSub channel. dApps, like when user is interacting with the dApp and wants to take an action, they make a meta transaction, a signed meta transaction. They send it to the PubSub channel, and then all of the relayers are listening to the same channel. They pick up, and each wallet has a reserved relayer, or like a relayer that has reserved the future blocks, like let's say the 3 future blocks. And during these 3 blocks, any meta transaction that comes in that has to go to this wallet, the relayer picks them up and batches them together and then submits them to the wallet. So this would work like there would be a single relay network that works with all the apps and all smart wallets, kind of.
It sounds right. I think that we will have to have that network. I think to make this meeting work, we should probably maybe dedicate, could maybe Sina lead the charge on the collision problem and kind of organize it, and we can like move on past the collision problem. Is that okay with everybody? And Sina?
Yeah, I mean, we'll define all of these into separate issues by themselves. And I think the next step is really actually defining what we want to build for the MVP. I mean, we're talking about different fragments, but I want to actually probably after this meeting, right, actually draw out the architecture of it and define what we need to build, and potentially gain consensus on different standards and such, right? And
well, I think everyone wants to build a slightly different thing, right?
Yeah.
And everyone is sort of building a different part of the same and of the same elephant. And the reason we are here together is that we want to have a single elephant that all parts work.
Right.
How do we come up with the most universal piece? Sorry, go ahead.
So maybe would it be useful if some people like show what they are like the status of what they are working on, or maybe is that something that we can do after the meeting, like each one like record a video of like a demo? How do you want to do that?
Exactly. If we do that asynchronously, that's going to be way better. Like everybody records a demo of like their current state of the art, and then we can all show that in some kind of channel.
Yeah, we'll drop a standard skeleton on what you want to show and the structure you might want to follow as well. So
yeah, I think an architecture diagram would help. Going through videos would be useful, but I'd like to compare, the big pieces and see what is common amongst them and how people solve them. And if we all come up with similar solutions in certain areas, then there's a lot of commonality, and where those architectural pieces diverge, then we talk about.
Yeah, and to Beltran, that's exactly the point of actually defining the problems we have and then splitting up into smaller topics.
And putting someone in charge of each one of those topics is going to be good.
Exactly.
I have a question. I don't know if you ever talk about that, but how do you manage Sybil attack on a kind of network? It should to be managed by the relayer, the gas provider, or it should to be managed directly by the contract? How you can do that?
This kind of goes back to the collision network problem, right?
Okay.
That's a trick that we need to solve, and I think Sina is going to lead up the collisions.
Yeah, Hugh.
I'm not sure.
Sorry. Are we talking about Sybil attack on deployment?
Because I have an idea for that. I'm not sure if it can work.
I mean, who Sybil are we talking? I mean, are we talking about multiple people pretending to be multiple layers, people sending multiple transactions? I'm not sure which sort of Sybil attack you're talking.
Exactly, we have kind of 3 or 4 different cases.
I'm talking about like people's. Imagine that you have 2 DApps with competitors basically, and there is one gas provider who is colluded with these DApps, and is just try to execute a lot of meta transaction just to draw all the ether of the competitor DApp. I'm not sure if you get what I mean, but basically try to explain.
Always reimbursed, because if you're always reimbursed, you're not going to be drained.
Sorry?
If you're always reimbursed for work that you do as a relayer, you cannot be Sybil attacked, because you're going to always be actually profiting.
Yes, correct. But I don't know in which design that could work. But basically, if you have like the DApp is rewarding the gas provider, right? So end of the transactions. So someone can execute a lot of meta transactions just in order to make the DApp paying a lot of Ether to a gas provider.
Sort of like the way we are approaching this in universal logins, and it's an example. It's not the way everyone is supposed to do, but it's not that we are gonna execute everything that people send to us. What we are doing is that we created our own token, and we give that token to the user, and the user uses that token to send transactions. And then that means that the only Sybil protection we need to do is the moment that we are giving you tokens to new users, we need to figure out if they're something. But once we give them the tokens, if someone starts attacking, they will run out of tokens, and then that's it.
Okay. I didn't know this token part. Okay, so yeah, maybe it can be a solution, but so the user needs a token to access to the network. Is that the way?
It's basically something that's reimbursement.
But if we have a reimbursement part, I'm afraid that the gas cost of all this stuff increase at the end. And although in a UX design, it's not maybe really solve our problem, because the user don't want to manage Ethereum tokens.
That's not so first of all, yes, that problem, or everything gets a little bit more expensive is one of the drawbacks of this approach. And I would love if we can discuss how we can solve that.
Yeah.
Second thing, I think the UI for the user, I don't think that's such a problem, because there are a lot of games that are not blockchain games that have some sort of approach like this, where you do something and you have like coins or stars or energy, and you spend those by doing stuff, and at some point you have to either do something in game to earn more, or you need to do a microtransaction to buy more, right? So, and that is a problem, a UX problem for each app to solve. And also remember, we are not talking about a single token. We're not talking about we are going to create a meta token. What you're talking is that there is an ecosystem of tokens, and relayers decide which tokens they support or which tokens they don't support.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, in this way that can make sense, but I still think that the user should never have to think about Ether or token, and to be really transparent for them. So,
but these are different UX problems, right? Like we are still like that. The user doesn't have to think about anything. It's still a different thing than you can relay it and pay from a contract. But I do agree on general. And just for me, certainly we're discussing a lot of things where everybody said, oh, this is a consensus problem and stuff. I would really like, because this meeting has like 20 more minutes, so we discussed 40 minutes already, so I would go back to...
I would love if we can actually just stop it there for that problem and focus on what we're going to show each other asynchronously. So we're going to, ideally, it'd be awesome we can actually all video demo our what we have done so far, and then share how messages are signed and how our meta transactions are designed, and also our contract execution functions and our contract interfaces. What else do we want to share? I mean, demo of everything else. Yeah.
But I mean, we are doing the demos asynchronously, right? Or are we going to do? Okay,
we're going to do it asynchronously. We're going to throw up a guide of what to actually show us and show and demo right now. So this is a hack MD. I'm going to throw it into the Zoom. Let's just talk and we can hack at it at the same time. So, Austin, you want to start with you?
So basically the relayer or the service node that we all create together is going to need to be something that we can share back and forth across platforms and stuff. And the best thing I've thought of so far is just building like a Docker scaffolding that everybody could use. But there's a certain sect of people that kind of shiver when I say Docker. If we created a Docker container that maybe even had a built-in Geth node that could do the stuff that you needed to do, and then you just kind of fill in the code to like go get your transactions, check to see if your transactions are valid, and then execute your transactions, and then each of us could kind of fill in that code. Is anybody like completely adverse to
that? No, I think that's a great idea. But why Docker especially? Like,
because it basically sets up the environment for us. Like if we need certain things in the environment, you don't have to do an npm install on a Windows machine or something like that.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. So maybe that'll be the thing that I'll head up is I'll try to get like this scaffolding Docker container available for everyone. We probably need someone to lead up the deciding of this, what Marek is talking about in chat, like what will the contract actually look like? I sort of nominate Alex, but if Alex wants to pass that off, I think you may be too busy.
Well, I think me and Marek, we are trying to solve that problem right now, because that's the part where we are working on, right? We are at this moment trying to execute the part. We are solving like basic structure, ENS, logins, etc. And now we are on the part where the user will sign a message, then get a token back, and that's. So I would love to give feedback on.
If I may add to that, we spoke a lot about this, about the network of relayers, and I think we should speak about it some more in the future. But I feel like it's more complicated and difficult problem to solve, and there will be no perfect solution. But in the meantime, I imagine having like great interoperability between all the different applications and all the different relayers and so on, if we're able to agree on the message format, execution, like execute transaction call format, And if we can focus on that a lot in upcoming weeks and maybe finalize it on DEF CON, that would be awesome, because it's already pushed interoperability incredibly across the projects, which would be goal number one. The second thing I would like to point attention to is we're talking about executing messages, but to execute messages, we need to have keys, owners, or whatever we call them, right? And to have interoperability between different services, we would need to able to go to one service and say, hey, I would like to add this key, and being able to confirm that from the other service, right? That's basically universal login idea, right? So in top of standardizing the message and the execution call, we should think about standardizing adding and removing keys, because it's going to be crucial for this interoperability. And I think if we can, I mean, it's super easy if just me and Alex and Justina here is working on it, and we can easily agree on it. Here's Justina, right? So, but if there's like 5, 10, 15 different projects today working on it, and hopefully in the future there's going to be much more, then it's going to be super hard to agree on the standards. And I think our goal should be to have ERC, whether we modify ERC 1077 or we agree or we create a new ERC or whatever is the way, is we have something that, you know, a lot of people, like majority of people says, yes, this is good stuff, I'm going to use it. Then it's super, super, super huge success. And on top of that, if we can figure out the Relier network, then man, like we're living in a better world already.
I definitely agree with you, and I think that I'm completely agree with you, and it's really cool because if we have defined this signed message standard, then we could have different networks of relaying with different rules, with different focus, maybe on some kind of transactions, or even we could have centralized relayer, basically just without a network. But because we are all agree on the common standard, we can all build on top of that. So I really...
yeah, I think, and I can't emphasize it enough. We won't be able to do relayer network without having a standard for calls and messages.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I want to do a meta topic about that standards, right? So me and Marek, our goal is to have something to be able to demo in Prague in October, and I will be we will be in. So I will be in Web3 in Berlin in October, and we will be both in Prague at DEF CON. And at DEF CON, I'm organizing a big roundtable that I'm just calling gas abstraction, but it could be meta transaction, where what I would like to have as a goal is that in that roundtable we can sort of discuss and almost finalize those standards. So my proposal would be this, right? My proposal would be that everyone sort of see everyone's agenda and schedule and see who could be in a person-to-person meeting in Berlin, who can be in a person-to-person meeting in Prague, which can be part of DEF CON or not, even if you don't have a ticket, and try to organize really like roundtables. And
we can get that set up. Yeah,
can do that.
We can get it set up. Yeah. So
even on top of that, maybe like, can you shoot an asynchronous version of what you would be presenting at that roundtable first? Kind of what we're talking about, yes. The asynchronous video. Let's sync up as much as we can leading up to that.
Yeah, I would love to keep like I think the roundtable, like we should keep those chats, keep those calls, so that when we meet there, it's not like we're not solving the problems the first time. We are almost just like finalizing that we
our goal roundtable. We finalize a draft of the ERC or standards.
Yes, and what I would propose on top of that, we specifically says what are the different calls and different messages format we have in the different projects. See what are the common parts. See what differs and why. Is it something we don't know in one project that other project is doing, and work on the code level, not just talking and having ideas, but like, I want this argument to be here. I want this argument to be a second argument. No, I want this argument to be a third argument, right? This kind of level of discussions. So where, again, we are in Prague, we say, this is the standard, we put it on ERC7, we put it as an ERC AIP, and we push it to the world, and kind of, you know, people hopefully take it for granted, or if not, then at least we have very valuable discussion.
We want to be really granular with this, especially since we're doing it asynchronously. So okay, we have a goal, which is DevCon / or in-person roundtable, right? And draft 0.1 of standards, and we will. And I guess this will we will post something up, something more polished about what we're going to be demoing and putting on the table, essentially. And we'll try to coordinate as much as we can before then. So anything
also
else to know? Yep.
Yeah. To expand on that, one of the issues that we are having is that we are trying not to only to be compatible with this standard, but also with other emerging standards like identity standards.
One as well.
There is also discussion on multiple identity standards that are emerging, and I'm not actually participating in that discussion, but I want whatever we do to be compatible with whatever like emerges from there.
We need a lead on other standards, essentially. Or we should.
So just a quick note on that. We're going to be having identity panel at DevCon as well. So it'd be great to have you guys participate on that. And also for the Web3 Summit, we have a UX node, so we'd be able to facilitate those conversations there as well.
Yeah. Anything else? Because the last 5 minutes, I want to focus on just operational group
So
stuff.
speaking of like these bigger players that are coming in, as soon as the Gnosis Safe launches, like that, it's going to be really important that we have a network available for them to use. I think I'd like to hear what Richard thinks about that and how this community can help with Gnosis Safe.
So our current plan is that we're going to have we have kind of a relay ourselves that currently we use to relay our transactions, but obviously that's a single service, and right now it's a centralized instance. In the future, our idea would be that there is some decentralized way, or less focused on us at least. And I think the important part for us is even if we ship the first version with our service only, that's no issue at all, because most of the stuff is client side, not contract side. If we have a standard for the contract side, right? So basically what I wrote in the chat, right? We are kicking off formal verification right now. So it would be nice if we, it's not impossible, but it's obviously if we have formal verification done, then do a change to the message stuff. We have to adjust our formal verification specification and redo certain stuff. So it's nice if we have certain, at least to a certain extent, is a standard that we can use already done, because then we wouldn't have to redo formal verification. But I think most of the stuff has been covered here, right? We have to kick off the standards, and that is the thing that for us is the most important, because these are contract things. But on the other hand, all the Gnosis safes that we use are deployed in an upgradable fashion. So theoretically, even afterwards, we will let the users, and the users have the possibility to upgrade their contracts to a new version. So this is worst case, we can upgrade the user, let's say it like this. But preferably, obviously, we would have something before in place.
That's exactly right. We don't want to do something and then have you guys launch the thing that's the thing, and then we aren't compatible with it, right? So we want to make sure we work with you guys directly and kind of move all the boats in the same direction.
Sounds very good, guys. I really need to run, need to take care of my newborn. So It was very good to talk to you.
We have two more things to discuss. Real quickly, they're kind of operational related. They're just finishing touches on this. So essentially, we need to move everything into a GitHub organization. Something, it's like neutral grounds or whatever, so out of Austin's awesome, so you started this GitHub where we started throwing things in it. We need an organization for it. And with that comes with a need for a name. We have a bunch of suggestions here from Full Metal Alchemist. It's a reference to an anime. Full Meta Alchemist. So there's a second.
Why Meta?
Async.
Yeah, I mean, okay, this can be done async, and I don't understand why we are using meta. I mean, meta means something about itself. A meta transaction is a transaction about a transaction. And this is not a this is not it. But,
Alex,
okay,
I would love to hear your ideas in Alex.
Okay.
Yeah, but you sure? I mean, that's why I spent the last 5 minutes. If we have El Cartel de la Meta, this MP suggestion. We have this one, which makes no sense. but I was told to throw it on there. I won't disclose.
Let's take async votes on a name.
Yeah.
What do we need to do in these last 5 minutes to make sure everybody has what they need and moves forward on this?
Yes.
We will.
I have a question. Where are share all the HackMD basically? Do you have like in HackMD? Do you have a kind of folder where you have all the documents, or how it works exactly?
So essentially, we're looking to put together org with GitHub organization. One repo will have all the project coordination things from like where we're coordinating. Second one would be probably all the, I guess we'll just organize it there, I guess, and there'll probably one for research items. We'll figure it out, but expect like a input sheet of like everything you need to demo within the next day, and then we'll coordinate on that.
Okay, and where we can add the demo basically?
You will find that out within a day.
Okay, on Telegram, you basically.
Telegram, yeah, we'll post it there and we'll spam it there.
Quick question. San Francisco is coming up. Is there opportunity to do a proof of concept there of a piece of this, such as like a relayer network or something like that?
Yes, we should all get our pieces together at East San Francisco if you're there.
Do you know the Yu-Gi-Oh card where it's like this god with like 5 pieces, like an arm and a leg? Team max team size is about 4 people, so we technically could get like 2 or 3 teams. And we
lots of fingers.
Yeah.
Tensorem has some ideas around sending these tokens, the gasless tokens. We built a mobile app around that is sending gasless transactions, and we'd love to keep pushing this. And at East San Fran we can talk around it, but I know Austin's is going to be at East San Fran, as well as Peter and the Tensorem team. So we'd love to push a demo around gasless transactions and put it in people's hands. That's the idea of the mobile app, is so that we can build something that's in people's hands so they can feel it out. And hopefully at DevCon we'll have something to show. Like we have an idea around a love token that we can share with people. So
yeah, so we have an idea of creating a mobile app, right? Where it's like people can just send on-chain mainnet transactions of love tokens to anyone for free. And it's just to demo out like what it means, what it feels like to send transactions without paying for gas. You just download the app, you can now send transactions. It's really simple. But yeah, we're trying to push and ship that for DevCon just as a fun demo.
So if I get that Docker container out and people start filling in their code, we'll have something that'll actually execute for ETH San Fran. So it may be about like building the hardware and some of that stuff too, if maybe a group wanted to think about doing that.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that. So hit me up.
Yeah, well, we could even, I'll figure out whether we should split off into a separate ETH San Fran MetaTX group. That might be better. Anyways, that should conclude our call. Anything else?
When is it Berlin? Because I feel it's ever past. Sorry. Right?
Berlin Web3 Summit.
No. I think that he read the message. What I wanted to say is I have a paid repo. We can do things in private and everything. So you can just use that repo because I won't use it till next year.
Okay.
I'm not paying for it, so it doesn't make sense to
We should be as public as we can with this stuff, though, right?
Yeah, of course. But if there are things that need to be private, then my
awesome.
So you can use it, and there's ongoing research that I dumped there when I started the UX workshop. So you can take it from there. I don't mind. I can make you owners there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We have an option for private repo. Ideally, we want it to be all public, but that's an option. And yeah, cool.
One last open question for the future. Should this be folded into the protocol? Like we already have nodes that do relay transactions to the miners. They all communicate together. It's already there, that's set up. If it's relayed on if it's folded on the protocol, maybe this becomes an incentive to run full nodes, which might be interesting also. I don't know.
Interesting, yeah. That's very interesting, yeah.
So another thing we might want to ask to the group is, does anybody want to head up any particular parts, or are we kind of solid already?
Yes, I think I would like to work on the standard for the sign-in message, basically, because I think that's the first step, and I would like to work with some people about that.
I think we won't need too many leads right now. We'll just go at it, and whoever is more on point and leads the discussion generally will know what's going on more, and they'll naturally take lead. Yeah, like Sina has. We have the
we just need 3 repos, like something around a repo where we talk around collision, and a repo where we talk around what standard we're using for signing the message, and then another repo around like how we're sending tokens with the transfers. And then within those 3 repos, yeah, and then within those 3 repos, no one really owns it. It's just we all put up our ideas, put up our code.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. We'll get it sorted. That will go up very soon over the next couple of days. Anything else, guys? If not, thanks for attending this community MetaTX call number 0. It's been a really pain in the ass to like coordinate, but yeah.
Love you guys. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coordinating, guys.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. See ya.
Thank you.
In the next meeting.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Will you post this? Oh, Peter just left.
Oh no, I'm still here.
Okay. Will you post this somewhere, or?
I'll post it just on YouTube. I'll make it like a MetaTX YouTube channel.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll also post about a potential next meeting, right? At some point.
We will have a next meeting whenever we need to have one.
So, but there is
if there's an agenda, if there's an agenda long enough to fill a meeting, you know, I'll fucking throw it in the chat and make you guys read it.
Okay, just
read the fucking agenda, by the way. Alex, I'm looking at you. You know, like
what?
I just came into here today, man.
No, you've done well. Nice shirt.
Okay.
Red.
Alex gets a pass for inventing this.
There's nothing planned directly for the before DEF CON. There are the Ethereum magician rings,
Hey,
right?
magician rings. We could be one. I mean, that could be.
Yeah, that was my question basically, because at least Tobias and I, we are like there for the whole ring meetings. So
that just could be where thing is, you know, our roundtable.
Yeah, that's basically.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. I'm helping do the magician stuff as well.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Beltrán, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You were talking earlier about making this standard to put into the protocol. Which protocol are you talking about? The Ethereum protocol, or?
Yeah, like we already have nodes, Geth and Parity, who do that. They talk whisper to each other. Like it's already part of the communication is already set up. Maybe this becomes another layer on top of it.
Right. That would be an incentive to run full nodes.
Which is a needed thing, you know?
That's exactly needed because there's no incentive right now, you know, which would be fucking really cool, actually.
Yeah.
And it helps with the collision problem.
It solves the collision problem. I also think that in the end, each DApp, I don't know, Richard, are you still there? I was interested in your thing. Why do you want to have it decentralized? You relay your own transactions to your own DApp. It kind of makes sense that you have your own.
Okay.
Richard left. Okay. No, I'm still here. Sorry, I was just muted. I always forget. My microphone mutes itself too, so I have double mute. That's kind of annoying. So no, we wanted to have a decentralized because in theory we want to have a wallet, right? That or the safe standard is not depending on us, right? We have like we want to provide a really simple, intuitive UI where it makes sense to have certain parts centralized. But in general, we don't want that the safe as a contract is tied to any centralized instance, right? Like we try to push formal verification together with Ethereum Foundation grants and with Ethereum Foundation. Like we want that this contract can be used by everybody who wants to build on top of it, right? And if we want everybody to build on top of a formally verified solution, it might make sense to have a standard that everybody can use, not that everybody has to take the contract and adjust like 2 or 3 lines to get it work with a relay network. So, and obviously the other very selfish point is if others are working on it, it's less work for us. Just as simple as that, right? Like, because if you have a centralized node, again, thinking about the future, right? So you have a centralized node, which, like, we have our server that has a node and it's relaying the transactions, but there's the whole thing, right? If it's one account that sends all the transactions, can it happen that this one is clogged up because one transaction is too slow, it's blocking all the other transactions? There are a lot of things that you might have to consider if it's suddenly not just one transaction per day you try to relay, but like 15,000 transactions per second, theoretically, in the far-fetched future, right? So the more people working on it is obviously, like, we don't want to be just us doing research. It's all cool, like, probably fun, but like, it's also a company like Gnosis is working on 3 products. We are 30 people, like, it's limited power, right? Like, having more people working together in a standard is just like the logical way to get something out there that can be used by everyone and is beneficial to us too.
So Richard, will you be around in these discussions? Like a key piece in my mind is we want to be able to help you and we want to be able to work on the stuff that you want us to be working on also, but it would be great if we keep communication up with you and maybe even what's the best way to do that?
So yeah, we like Tobias and I, we are like Tobias as a more product side and I'm more the technical side, right? We are part of the Zeppelin group and we will try to be part of most of the, like, all of the calls that we can take part in. So we will always be there. I think we will also try to actively take part in all the other stuff. Like right now, we are trying to get the first baseline done for mainnet version, getting everything ready for formal verification. But then I think the next step would exactly be like, how can we plug into more other different parts more seamlessly like it is right now?
Exactly. What we're finding is like everybody has this cool working thing that's open source, right? And they say, well, it's open source, it's in the repo, but that doesn't work. Like we need to get better at sharing. And I think this asynchronous video idea may totally bring it together.
Yeah, I think also because in the asynchronous video idea, it's really important that kind of we have this feeling like we looked at Alex's idea for the identity, right? Like the EIP 1077, and we looked at a lot of these other relay ideas from Newport and Status, and we feel like they all make sense, they all work, but we have slightly different requirements, and therefore we need 1 or 2 parameters more. But then the others, they don't need these 1 or 2 parameters. It's like everybody has a slightly different thing, and it's really hard to find like the common ground. And I think that's also like probably what's gonna be, or where there's going to be more discussion than even finding a solution for the collision problem, might be what is the standard that we can use that everybody agrees on that is like flexible enough for everyone? Because like the safe, especially the safe, is probably one of the things that has super, super specific requirements. And I think one of the key parts in the video is also where we should probably explain, like, if you look at the signature of our relay method, it probably has the most parameters of all the implementations. Like we have some base gas, we have the gas limit, right? Others just specify a reward and the reward token maybe, and then it's done. But we have like all these small pieces, and it's like, I think it's interesting also for you guys and for everyone else, why do we have these pieces? Because it's not like we started out with a very simple one, and then it's like also Stefan, right, who is like, he wrote the first multisig. He has some experience in Solidity and Ethereum. He came up with certain questions where it was like, yeah, we have to add more parameters, at least for the safe, where I see it's not really necessary for any other project, but that is definitely something that I would like to include in this video, or at least write a docs in the repo. And right now we're working on our own docs to get this up to date, and this would also be part. So that's definitely something that we, and just like to share that, because there are different requirements. Maybe we find a way that even if we all have different signatures, kind of, it still somehow works. I just don't know. Like maybe there's a way. I don't know.
That sounds good. So who was the second person you were talking about that does more of the community stuff?
That was Tobias. Okay. Like he was near to you.
I'll probably ping him just so I have a good contact. Your Gnosis safe contracts are beautiful, by the way.
Thanks. Good to hear. That makes me really happy.
He said that with such like earnesty. Like he was really happy.
Yeah, it's like I started smart contract development basically when I joined Gnosis 1.5 years ago or something, right? It's not that I sit there and wrote constant smart contracts. It's like the first big contract. So it's like,
no, it just made me happy when another was happy, naturally.
All right, guys, I better get back to work. Anything else you need from me?
I will get going too.
Okay.
See
Thank
ya.
you
Have a
very
nice
much
day.
for putting this together. See you guys later.
See ya.
Bye. Cheers. Mark, were you asking for some reason that question earlier on, just to understand?
I was wondering because it's a chat that I had with someone tonight, and he's saying like, okay, if we're incentivizing people to relay, do gasless transactions, he's saying that you're basically gonna run the price of Ethereum down. Because the need for you're almost saying that we don't really want people to use gas, and thus the value in it, or the necessity to pay high prices for it starts decreasing. I think that the problem around that would be like to build
so we can use
the oncoming of Shaspa. Yeah, that's the thing. You would use Ethereum more, but
we can onboard millions of new people onto it better, easier, quicker. I mean, it's like a curve. It's like you lose some, you gain some. I mean,
maybe we go back to the original reason for which Ethereum was built. Ethereum was built to pay for computation, and it sucks when it's expensive. So
it's a very interesting question that both combines it's a very. I think we should put a thread on it and at least bookmark it somewhere.
Because I keep telling people, gas is a representation of the electricity that you've used for the transaction, and then the tokens are your representation of the gas that you've used for the transaction, which is a representation of the electrons that are being burnt, so it's an interesting model.
Yeah, some explanation needs to be built into. Well, it's an interesting thought. I'll think about it. Alrighty, very interesting. You're organizing this. A lot of smart people together. It has more people than the open source Web3 design.
Of course it has.
Call.
Yeah.